So I'm Fabian from Useeds. We are very happy to host you today because research is a very, should I say that, a very central topic to basically all projects that Useeds has been doing in the last more than 10 years. And also we've been supporting our clients to get research processes in-house. I myself, I'm currently leading the service design team at Useeds, but I've been doing research for more than 10 years now. And I'm very happy to share the stage with Lennart.
Thank you. This is good. I never speak with those kind of things. So, my name's Lennart. I work at Cornelsen. For all of those of you who went to school in Germany, probably know the company from the school books, like the Green Line. But we also do digital products, and that's where I came to play 2 years ago. I now lead the research team at Cornelsen, and we'll dive into that a little later. So, back to you.
Okay, so today we're basically talking about a framework that we were introducing about a year ago, and that we've been iterating throughout the whole time. So it's the two of us that is standing up front today, but there's more people that are actually involved with the whole user feedback day topics. I think there's Betty somewhere. There's there, yeah. Sorry. Then there's other researchers from Useeds that have actually been conducting the interviews, and then there's Lisinka that is doing the project management on our side, and we're very happy to be in the discussion with you later on. But before we start with the content, I would like to ask who of you is actually working in some kind of environment where there is a framework for regular user testing? Just show your hands. Who's working in that? So there's like 1, 2, 3. Okay, so 6 or 7. And who has introduced a framework for regular user testing by themselves? So it's 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, nice, perfect. With this, I would like to hand over to Lennart again, and he's telling you a bit about what the situation was about a year ago.
Exactly. So phase 0, as we say, is going to be about the situation we faced at Cornelsen about a year ago before we had the user feedback day. So real quickly. First of all, we had a digital product portfolio. Some of those are blurred because they're very top secret, so I can't show you. However, the names you see are the products that are out now. It was about 20 by then, I think, if I remember correctly. And behind those products and projects, there are teams that are bigger, there are smaller teams, there's projects that are more important, there's projects that are less important, obviously. So there's quite the variety of research budget behind those teams. There's some that had basically none at all. There's some that had, well, more than nothing, a lot more than nothing. And some of them were quite well staffed with the entire product owner, product manager, developer, editor for the content, designer. Some of them had external providers for the design. So it's a very, very wild bunch of teams with very different structures. However, what unites all of them is that none of them had a dedicated user research resource. So, which leads me to the next slide, because back then this was the user research team. We were 3 people, a working student working part-time, 2.5 days a week. We had a freelancer who's present in this room who worked 2 days a week at Cornelsen, and we had me with a 4-day week. So in total, it's less than 2 people, human power, that tried to organize, the portfolio, which is quite big, as you saw before. So we had this huge portfolio with very different research budgets. We had not such a big team to kind of tackle all the research needs we saw in those teams, which resulted in a very different density of research activities during 1 year. So there were teams with a lot of budget that obviously had a lot of research activities going on, and anything from user testing to surveys to remote testings to what else do we have? Mostly those, actually. And then the very specific forms where you go into a school and you give your product to a school so they can test it for a couple of weeks. So this was the best case. The worst case you also see in lane 3, which is no activities at all, which is obviously not so good. And so this situation was quite unsatisfying for us for different reasons, which I cannot dwell into because, well, the time is not ticking here, but it is actually ticking. So I'm going to skip this part and go right to the goals that we set up for us for the user feedback day in order to make this better than it was before. So first of all, as we obviously heard from the title of this talk, we wanted to introduce regular user testing into development, which has not been there before. There were teams that did not test at all, and we had a very big variety of proficiency about user research in general. There were PMs or POs that did know a lot about it. There were some that did not know so much about it. So we wanted to at least have some kind of baseline for regular testing, which for us meant once a week, actually. Also, we said, how can we convince teams to take part in this? Because normally user testing is, at least it's not for free. And to really make this a easy entrance for the teams, we said that for the first of all, we as the UX team, because I didn't say this before, sorry, the user research is part of the user experience team at Cornelsen, which is a lot bigger actually. We would pay for the user feedback day, so they would kind of get it for free. I mean, it's not for free because somehow Cornelsen pays for it, but the teams themselves wouldn't see how much they would pay for this. So it's basically, hey, come by. This is for free. We give you this whole framework for nothing. Why not? And second of all, we wanted to encourage exchange between product teams because Cornelsen is quite an old company. It's about 70 years by now. Quite conservative in some ways. However, they afford the UX team. They formed this team 2.5 years ago, which is really cool, I think. Still, people would not talk too much sometimes to each other. So there was quite some silo thinking, this only my product and out there anything else, I don't care. And we wanted to tackle this because we saw a lot of synergetic effects or potential for synergetic effects when there were two people or two teams working on the same problem at the same time, not knowing at all about this. So how did we do this? Simply by testing 2 products in one session. So there's always 2 product teams meeting each other basically in the observation room, and at that point actually coming to talk to each other for the first time sometimes, which was always like, yay, what? And how would we do this? And this is where Useeds comes into play, by collaborating with an agency, because as you saw, we were 2 people before. It's a little too little to build up this framework and keep it running. Also, we needed the know-how from an agency that has done this before. I don't know how many times, but more than once at least. And also, yes, as I said, the human power to make this work. There's a lot of researchers right here in this room that did take part in the UFD so far, and this was not possible with only us, obviously. And this leads me to the ramping up for the next part.
So the question was, how did we start? And as Lennart said, we've been doing that for quite a few times already. And we suggested to start with onboarding the actual team. So Lennart said that project managers or POs, they didn't really know or have not really been on the same level. So we were trying to onboard them. And during those 3 onboarding workshops, and you see it's almost, I think it's like 20 people. So it should have been maybe 1 person from each product team that you were seeing before. And each of those workshops took about 4 hours. In the first hour, we basically spoke about the framework that we wanted to introduce, which was like a version 0 adapted from projects before. We tried to explain to them what we are actually introducing, what are the questions that you can actually ask and expect answers from in a regular testing session that we wanted to introduce. And then during the main part, we actually went through a process that the product teams would go through in the future. So we actually let them play through the kickoff. We had some templates prepared. We took like 45 minutes to go through that, so that they can actually learn by doing it, and that when they're working with their actual products, that they've been through the process once already. And this was what we showed them, not blurry, but I'll let you know what is under those things. And I mean, maybe every one of you has been through that process by themselves. You need to recruit, you need to define your target group, you need to speak to the product owners who they actually want to see during those interview sessions. Then you need to make sure that the questions you ask are the right ones. So you need some kind of kickoff with the researchers and the product team. You need to iterate on the questionnaire and the interview. Then you're doing the actual interviews, which is then happening in week 2. And as this is, or most of the people that we recruit for the user feedback day with Cornelsen are either students or teachers, we can't do it on one day because they have to be at school usually. Sometimes we will also do a full day testing, which is usually during vacation times. So the week after next week, we're happy to just have a full day of testing. But in that case, that's Wednesday and Thursday afternoon. There's usually 3 interviews taking place on each of those days. What we also said during these onboarding workshops, besides that it's kind of free for them, that it's also not much time that they need to spend on it. They just need to be there for the recruiting, just ask or answer a few questions. They need to prepare the kickoff. They need to be there for some interviews and then need to be there for the presentation. So it's not really that much effort that they need to put in to make the hurdle as low as possible. And those basically are the 4 phases, right? So the red is the recruiting, the blue is the preparation phase of the interview guideline, green is the actual doing the interviews, and then yellow is the analysis. And if you now look at those small projects, I should say, there's different perspectives that we have. That's the perspective that most of you know. It's going through one topic, first the preparation, then the doing, then the analysis, for, as Lennart said, for 2 different kinds of products. And that's just like the regular researcher perspective. But then there's a second perspective, and Betty's doing that part, and she's basically working on 4 projects at the same time. And it's basically the same process every week. So for one project, she's doing the recruiting or starting the recruiting. Then she takes care that those events take place for the preparation, that everyone is involved, that everyone has the information that is needed. Then for this second line, where the actual interviews are taking place, she's taking care that all the people are coming, that everyone in the room knows what is expected from them regarding the documentation of the interviews. And for the analysis, it's again basically this organizational part. And that's basically every week. And so the those 2 different perspectives is basically the content part is with the researcher that is doing the research, that is doing the interviews. And then there's the organizational part, which is basically making sure that facilities are prepared. So for our researchers, it's actually very comfortable because they don't need to prepare the lab, they don't need to prepare the analysis wall. They just come in, everyone is prepared, the devices are there with the prototypes on it, and they can just do the interviews. Anything else that I forgot? Well, as Lennart said, Betty's also taking care of the kind of atmosphere in the observation room so that they liaise with each other, right? So that different products also talk to each other. And now, as we've done quite a few user feedback days, also preparing maybe old findings, putting them up to the wall, showing them to people, and making sure that they get out that they get out a lot out of those 2 days of testing. If we look even one one step further out on that whole project. It's basically been 40 iterations now, or 41 roughly around that. We started in August last year, and we wanted to be this whole project to be an iterative process by itself. So to make sure that we're not introducing something that doesn't really work with Cornelsen, but rather make sure that we're iterating on it the whole time. So we did 2 retros. These were basically, or the researchers from Useeds were taking part, and the Cornelsen UFD team also took part. And we just spoke a lot about quite important topics, some things that are actually working very good, and also things, of course, that we need to improve to make sure that the user feedback day is developing. We also had, and especially in the beginning, had steering committees, which was with the sponsors inside of the company, to make sure that we're heading into the right direction, that we also take in the feedback from stakeholders a bit further up the ladder. And as we proceed, those steering committees just fan further out, so there's just more time, because we're now at a stage where we are quite sure that what we're doing is the right approach, and we don't need to iterate as much on it. Still, we are having jour fixes every week still, to talk about issues, that talk about the last one, was that okay, do we need to adjust certain things, is there another topic coming up that we need to make sure that we are prepared for that. And if we look at one of those retros, we were in a very happy mood in those 2. And of course, those retros served 2 purposes. One was to feel as a whole team, as the researchers usually are working at Useeds, and the Cornelsen team usually works at Heidelberger Platz. That was also a very nice way of just mingling with each other and sharing like a common goal. And the second thing was, as I said before, talk about topics that we need to change. And as you've seen before in the framework, we had those events for the user feedback day, researcher, on different days, and that was, for example, one thing that we changed. So now it's just one day for Betty with all those different topics taking basically place in on Monday. So then that on Wednesday and Thursday, there's only the conducting phase, and just to make it a bit easier, the planning. Also, something that we introduced sometime during that process was a sheet for every observer. There are roughly maybe 120 people now inside of the MS Teams channel. So there's just many people that take part during the interviews that were not taking part before. So we need to make sure that they are actually making the right notes, that we can work with them later on. And then we also iterated on templates for the kickoff workshop. We call it the Research Canvas. And this is basically the document that each researcher gets, like as the first document for preparing the kickoff together with the product team. And there you find things like has the product team been doing user feedback days before? Is there any knowledge, anything that they changed in the product? What is the actual URL for the prototype maybe? And then there's, and we limited that to only 2 big questions. What are actually things that you would like to get out during that user feedback day? It's not 3, it's not 4, it's just 2, and the space is quite small, that they really need to focus. And then that's something that we can discuss during the kickoff, of course. And also something that I find quite funny is very often these scenarios for the first contact have been the first time that product teams actually thought about what's the situation like in real life. And we, of course, needed to have a situation during the interviews that works. And then this is the top finding slide for the researchers. It's not being sent out that way, of course, because those top three bubbles are just information, or is just information for all the researchers that are doing the research, so that there is a format that gets repeated, and that Cornelsen knows what to expect from a presentation, how that looks, and how it's formatted, and all these kind of things. So these were basically things that we iterated a bit on during the process, and well, I can say the rocket took some speed, and then yeah, there are further things that we want to talk about.
All right. Because if you take speed, you look like this. So I'm going to give you some examples of, yeah, Fabian already talked about iteration, an iterative process that we would change and try to make the UFD better every week, every retro, every geofix that we had. And I picked 3 examples of things that we did some fine-tuning at some point where we realized that this could be done better. One thing was the fact that participants we recruited did not actually fit the target group. That sounds quite stupid. It did happen even though we did work together with an agency, and they said, yes, the person you had recruited is the teacher he or she says he is. This sometimes was not true, so we decided to do some things to make sure that the people we had sitting in front of us, because it leads to obviously frustration if you notice that the person you are talking to or you're watching through the television is not your target group. So the product teams are like furious sometimes, for good reason. So what we did is we let the agency actually check by telephone the language skills and the technical equipment they said they would have before, so that we actually call them and ask, well, do you speak German as a fluent language, and do you actually have the experience with the technical equipment you said you have, which works quite well, I think, by now. Second of all, we had a standard screener for different target groups, so we would not just go out into the wild and ask random criteria from the product teams that they would want to see realized in people in the lab, but we would prepare this standard screener plus a pool of screening criteria that the teams could choose from, criteria that we knew would actually work, that are kind of recruitable. So because you can ask for certain things, for example, an alien, but you cannot recruit an alien even if you ask for it. So criteria that, yeah, do work. And another thing is rather recently we came up with personae. Actually, we did have personae, about 40 of them. Then we put them together into 6, which is a lot better to work with. And to be able to recruit the personae, personas. Sorry, it's the German plural is personae, I think. To make sure to be able to recruit the personas we had in our company, we came up with 6 items as indicators. After which we could actually choose if we want that or this persona for the different products, which gave us insight into a lot more knowledge, because it's a quantitative study that we did there with a couple of thousand people, I think. That gave us a lot more quick insight into a lot more knowledge about the person we had sitting in front of us, just with asking that person basically 6 questions. So it's profiling if you want, but it worked quite well for us. Yeah, that's it for this one. Another situation we had, Fabian already talked about results, and results fine, communicating results. We had the situation, obviously, that different stakeholders need different information. If you are the C-level from Cornelsen, you want different things from this UFD compared to an editor that produces content on a day-to-day basis. So on the one hand, we had 3 levels for the product teams, which is first of all the general findings that are relating to the target group in general. So it's not product or feature bound at all. On the second level, we have the top findings product, I think they're called here. Yes. Which are the most relevant findings for the product for the specific testing. And then we had, I don't know how many, up to I don't know if there's a limit, 6 or 8 or 10 detail pages with really detailed findings, with observations, with action points for each site or each feature, each screen, whatever. So 3 layers that you can look into. On the other hand, we have the management summary that on a weekly basis I'm sending out. So it's a lot black there because I cannot show you again. Confidentiality, yay. Which includes all the way from the C-level people to just basically my boss, and informing them in a little more detailed and situated way about the top findings from the UFDs. And they actually do react to this. So some people even actually read them and they come back to me and say, this is great, thanks for the update. Because for them, it's also a political instrument for us to keep them informed that we still work, that we still do good jobs here. But also just to make sure that they have at least some kind of information. Plus, we always link the cloud, the cloud address where they can actually dive into the entire 40, I don't know how many presentations, you said 41, 42 feedback days, so there's a lot of info that we provide to them if they want to dig into. Not so many do, I suppose. And there's another situation, which is augmenting the impact, which I split into 2 lanes, which is the back then and today. So on the top, we have the back then. As I said before, we were a small UX team, the UXR team in the beginning. Here you can already see we instantly hired 2 more people back then when we came up with the user feedback day, because we knew that with the 3 of us before, we would not be able to do it even with the support of Useeds and the human power they provided, basically. So we were able, got by our boss, basically, because she fought very hard for every person that joins the team, to have 2 more people running the UXD, whereas the rest of us is just general research, like people doing products here and there and general research and ground research, whatever. Whereas now we are even 2 more people, and we now specialized. So we have 4 product researchers, as Fabian mentioned before as well, next to the UFD researchers who have dedicated products now. So they are a lot more into the products. They work very much closer to the product teams as we were able before, because if you remember, we had some 20 digital products. This way we are getting a lot closer to the day-to-day work, and we get a lot more insights into what they are into, what the tasks are, what the jobs are for the next months, and makes our job a lot easier. In the beginning, again, back then, about a year ago, we had to advertise for the user feedback day quite a lot, because obviously nobody knew about it before. So to fill the slots, we really had to be proactive and proactively communicate to the product teams, hey, do you want to come by? This is an example for a poster we hung up in the elevators. I think most of them are still there. Inviting them to come by for the testing days, to take part, to participate, to sit with us and watch and make notes on Post-its. And whereas now, thanks to the fact that we are a bigger team, thanks to the fact that we have implemented research roadmaps that product managers actually work with, we came from this, okay, we need to bring the UFD to you and we need to advertise it to you and sell it to you, to, okay, you are coming to us by now, because after 1 year, the UFD became quite famous. It's very popular. Everybody loves the UFD. Not only because it's a lot of fun, but because it just brings very good results to the teams, and they actually experience that it's really beneficial for their work. And so now we're at this place where we can say, okay, we would suggest to you with those product researchers where a UFD makes most sense for you to place, because it's the exact right timing for the topic you have. And I think that's again it. And Fabian is going to proceed to the future.
So most of you maybe know this map. Yay. And we've been speaking about a few topics already. There is the communications aspect that Lennart was just mentioning. There's the recruiting part. So how did we actually try to make recruiting as simple as possible for the product teams, and to make it very time efficient. Then there's the governance aspect, which is basically making sure that product teams come to the user feedback day at the right point of time. However, it it's still not perfect in my opinion, because currently we are booked out until the end of the year, and maybe even a bit further than that. So we are not really we can't really be agile in saying, oh, there's a new product coming up, and we need actually to make sure that that product is also be seen by some users. So there's still some room of improvement, of course, but it's a lot better than what we're starting with. And I've shown you some templates, and I think in those areas we're quite sure that we've tackled most of the big issues already, and we know that this process actually works. But there's one area that is currently, in our opinion, kind of missing, which is the knowledge management. Right now we're using an MS Teams channel with everyone at Cornelsen, and we are also part of that. There is now, as we said, like 41 user feedback days, but as we've had quite a few with tool, there's like 70 presentations. And just having a folder with 70 presentations, it's okay if you know, there's this kind of product, and some insights might be interesting for me in that, then I can access that. But it's very difficult to actually find something that I don't really know that I'm looking for. So this kind of discovery aspect is currently really missing. And that's actually something that we want to discuss with you. How much effort is that actually worth, right? How much effort is needed to have like a robust research library, and how much is maybe overdone? Because we currently don't, we are trying to find our way, I would say. And then there's a second aspect of this knowledge management, which is in the beginning, we were really focusing on each of those products, and we wanted to make every product by itself better. And I think we are very good on that already. But what we are not very good at is gaining insights about specific target groups, and making sure that interviews with the same target group that we're like having every 3, 4, 5 weeks with teachers, for example, that we are building up a library of knowledge about them, and making sure to merge it with the personas, to have just more information about the target groups when there's a new product starting, that they can actually look and see what do we actually know about these target groups. So those are kind of the challenges. And as we are almost running out of time, just quickly about that topic, which is who is actually the right person to be the interviewer during those iterations. And in my opinion, it's not that easy, because you cannot really put in a very junior person into that role, because sometimes those questions are very difficult to interview, and you need a lot of consulting with the product team, and what do they want to actually find out, and it's just not appropriate. And then on the other hand, for a very veteran researcher, it might not be very interesting to be like in this repeating process over and over and over again. So this is just, I think, a quite challenging topic for Cornelsen, in the next half year and the next year. How will this kind of user feedback day evolve, and how will they actually recruit for these roles? Because you need kind of a person in the middle, like a mid-level role, that knows a bit about how to do research, that can actually consult. But that is also okay with like this repetitive process, right? Yeah, I think that's it for the staffing part. So to summarize what we've been speaking about, what we see as success factors is basically the internal budget from UX, so that for the product teams it's very cheap to take part. We also or we think that making sure that we had 3 roles, one more for the operational part was key, one for the executing researcher or the product researcher that is doing the interviews and all the preparation, but also make sure to rotate. And we are seeing that that 2 people are not really enough, because then there's someone that is sick or on vacation. So you need quite a few people to make it run, and then they cannot only do the user feedback day, but they need to do something more. And I think the product researchers, as the development is right now, is quite a good direction. And then you need someone that also looks more on that general process and make sure that this process also develops and really fits to the company that you are trying to introduce it to. Then you need to make sure to onboard in the beginning, onboard your friends and foes to make sure that they are kind of invested in the process. And what I was, or what I forgot during those onboarding workshops to tell you about is one part of those onboarding workshops was to talk about KPIs with those product teams. So to understand what would, when will they say that the user feedback day is a success? And we measured those during, I think, the first 20 or 25 roughly. And the results were we should just continue doing that, and it's very helpful. And but I think it was very important just to understand what is central to them. Then, as Lennart was saying, make sure to adapt your findings for the different target groups inside of the company, and then also again just make sure to iterate the whole framework by itself by making sure to do retros and all these kinds of things. Yeah, so we are very much looking forward to your questions, and of course also the interactive part later on about knowledge management and further things.